And it's a pleasure to introduce the first speaker, Michael Taylor, which is a product line manager on PE, pressure-sensitive materials at Avery Dennison. And his speech will transform innovation into fashion and transform material sciences into wearable products. Michael?
If I can partly accomplish that, I'll be very happy. So, this is just one button forward, right? Okay, yeah. So yeah, most people probably think of Avery Dennison as the sticky labels company. That's where it started. But if anybody is wearing a jacket today or a shirt or anything, and you find this inside, this irritating thing which really bothers you, we also do that. Yeah. We also do these things here. Sometimes when you see that, it's coming from Avery Dennison. And also on the front, I think there's also another printed fabric labels or even woven fabric labels. Basically, Avery Dennison retail branding division, we basically put names on things and we put information on things. This is like, you might find this crazy, but it's the passport. Without that, you can't sell a garment into another country. It's like the passport. Sometimes we print 47 different languages on that, and it's about 10 layers deep. I'm sure you've had something like that. And then the spare button is also sewn into the thing as well. So, yeah, and most people go, I don't like that. So that's kind of some of what we do. So yeah, basically there's two sides to RBIS: retail branding and information solutions. I'll just explain a little bit more about what that means. Is this working? Okay, so in the information solutions side, it's all about inventory management, loss prevention, prevention of fraud, authentication of products, and also the information systems, barcoding, pricing, so on and so on. On the branding solutions side, the side which I am working in, there's two sides to it. There's permanent branding, which is some of these, what I've just shown you on my jacket here, but there's also the removables where you have a hang tag or a self-adhesive label on your clothing, which tells you what the size is or what the price is. There's price stickers and those kind of things. Basically what we're doing is elevating brands. People will buy brands. They like to see flashy tags. There's a lot of innovation in that area, believe it or not. A lot of developments we have to do in papers. The old-fashioned look, the new modern look, the glossy look, the satin look, all kinds of different things. Basically what we're doing is elevating brands. My particular role in this organization, I used to work for Materials Group of Avery Dennison, which is the sticky labels business. So I spent the last 4 years developing adhesive technologies and film technologies for pressure-sensitive materials, for labels, largely for health and personal care applications in the beverage industry and so on. I've now shifted over to the retail branding side, where I'm now a user and in fact a purchaser of those types of materials. So balancing, if you like, my material science background a little bit further down the supply chain, a little bit closer to the end users, because mainly who we sell to is the retail brand owners. That's who's driving our business, driving our innovations. So I'm going to speak, it's almost in two parts. In a small part on how we innovate. It's much further down the chain than most of what I've heard so far in this conference, where we get our information from. And then more specifically, I'm going to move into a few developments in pressure-sensitive labeling, where we're innovating with the goal of being more sustainable, and what the challenges are there, and how you can be creative in that area, even with something like a commodity material like a size strip that you have on your jeans. So a bit about how we innovate. We do a heck of a lot of research, surveys, standing in stores, walking around stores, taking photographs, pulling and playing with hang tags, just seeing what's new, talking to customers and consumers, talking about buying behavior, what influences their buying, what influences their purchase decisions. So a lot of consumer insights, a lot of trend research, using internal and external agencies to gather all this information. Using the information, we develop new innovative products, services and tools based on those drivers. And then we have also strategic customers, strategic suppliers, and strategic partnerships with some of the retail brand owners. You're probably wondering what halo brands are. Halo brands are typically new companies who are just starting up. They don't have the money to invest in a creative label which will help to promote and sell their product. So we do all the creative design work for those companies, work together with them, and then obviously they're then buying our products for the hang tags as an ongoing supply situation. We call them halo brands because we're kind of elevating them from startup to full scale. So that's how we kind of get our insights, what is driving the market, what is driving the purchase intent of the consumer. So we produce these brochures once every month, and they're given out regularly to our clients as well. We do macro trend research through agencies and dedicated teams, really getting down to what's happening in the industry. What's Nike doing with their sports shoes? Who's building technology? Who's building sensors and measuring devices into their sportswear? Who's developing breathable clothing, which changes as your body temperature changes, so you become more, in the sporting goods arena, more performance wear. So from insights and deep dives, we go deep dives into real industry-related insights. What's happening throughout the whole supply chain? And a lot of what's coming out of it, you probably guessed it, the word sustainability is a huge driver right now, and it's driving a lot of what we do. Most of our innovations are in the direction of more sustainability. You wouldn't realize actually the power of branding. It's quite remarkable how a small tag or a small label can actually influence purchase intent. In a lot of cases, and I'm guilty of it myself, although I've been collecting them since I started this job in January, but I've been throwing hang tags away forevermore, all this rubbish that comes, but it actually attracts you to buy it in the first place. Size strips, if you can find a product, there's so much competition out there today. I don't know if you've walked around High Street, typical High Street in London. There's 20 shops all selling 60 different varieties of denim jeans. I mean, how do you buy these things? The faster you get it in the customer's hands, the better. And one way to do that, one simple way to do it, is to make the size easier to identify. If you can't find your size easily in a shop, you could quite easily just walk to the shop next door, where it's much easier to find that size. So a size strip, a simple commodity label on a pair of jeans in a shop which says XL or L or medium or whatever it is, with the price clearly indicated, will help you to sell that product. So in doing our research, we're looking for the impact. What do tags and labeling and packaging, what impact do they have on the consumer when estimating the value of a product? They do enhance the value of a product in the eyes of the customer. What's the meaning? What can we communicate through the piece of clothing? Hang tags are a great example of that. Are you communicating 100% recycled material? You can do that through your hang tag and make it extremely obvious by printing it on a piece of recycled paper. How do they perceive value? Sustainability is jumping out of the page when we're doing our research today. It's just jumping at us. It's just coming at us on a daily basis. And also, how do these things change on a global basis? We're interested in all of this. You've got to remember where we are in the whole chain of things. We talk to brand owners who are typically located either in the US or in parts of Europe, but their production is close to their manufacturing sites. And the manufacturing sites have increasingly been driven towards the Far East. Lower cost labor, lower cost materials, lower cost factories. So it's a global business, and how does that change on a global basis in terms of what's selling to the market? So some of our findings just in general, this is not specific to any particular type of labeling, hang tags or size strips. consumers will pay more with brand embellishment. Typically will pay more. They're more likely to purchase if it's an attractive label or an attractive hang tag, or it has attractive labeling on the garment. Sustainability, I'm going to talk a lot more about, of course, really does matter. And the next slide will show you what we've found in terms of selling on a sustainability basis. So looking at sustainability matters, we found in our research 88% of consumers expect brands to take measures to be environmentally friendly. They actually expect it. It's almost like a given now that when we say environmentally friendly, it's sourced in a responsible way from factories where we're paying at least a living wage, where factories which are not polluting. 78%, again, very high number, believe they can change company behavior with purchasing power, buying brands which are more sustainable. And this is remarkable because in a business-to-business environment, and you're continually selling down the next chain, however far down the chain that you are, there's always opposition to anything sustainable that costs more. And yet the consumers are saying they're willing to pay more. And no one's really recognizing this fact. So it's all about rethinking how we do things in our design. I'm going to speak a bit about pressure-sensitive labeling in particular now, and innovative solutions in terms of sustainability. Now, I think most people probably know the history of Avery Dennison back in 1935 from some old disused machine parts. Stan Avery made the first lamination machine for making pressure-sensitive materials to the business which it is today, which is 25, something like that, 1,000 people worldwide. It came as a surprise to me. I was working in the materials group and I knew about this number for a long time. What I didn't know is that nearly 20,000 of those people are in the retail branding side of the business, because we have a lot of facilities, a lot of labor-intensive facilities producing such things that I showed you on my coat. But it's just a sticker, right? It's not that complicated. It doesn't use a lot of chemicals, does it? You know, top coatings aren't polymers. Adhesives aren't acrylics, you know. Release liners aren't got silicone in them, do they? You know? There's a whole load of chemistry in there. We're a massive consumer of chemicals in this industry, a massive consumer. And there's a huge push. Pick up any fashion magazine now, that they're talking all the time about how polluting some of these factories can be, how the fashion industry is a big polluting industry. So sustainability does matter. Sustainability isn't a switch that you just one day stop being not sustainable. It's a drive and it's a move in the right direction. Whatever contribution you can make. So you can see all the chemistry. That's a typical, a three-layer construction where you've got a release liner and an adhesive and a face material that you print on. Is typically more than 3 layers, as you can see here. So there's a lot of design possibilities here to make things more sustainable. Okay, so coming into this business in January, I was asked to drive a sustainable innovation policy, and I looked at what we were doing, using materials that have been used for years that nobody really thought about. Big push towards taking out surfactants, which are on the REACH list in our products. Big push towards bio-based PE instead of traditional PE. And also more and more interest in 100% recycled paper products, all with FSC certification. So the rest of the talk I'm going to focus on number one, but I just want to point out here before I move on that, press the wrong one, this is the pointer. So if you look at a construction where the red is the face material, the grey is the adhesive, and the white is the release liner, and number two here, the bio-based PE. I was challenged by my manager when I started this role to have cost neutrality. They won't pay any more, she said. So how can you make something more cost neutral that's more sustainable? So I took a look at what we were doing, and we were selling 100 micron thickness of polyethylene as the face material. Quite a standard product, matte appearance, used for size strip labeling that you put on denim jeans, with an adhesive which is removable, which doesn't leave a stain on the fabric. Nice simple product. Nobody ever thought about what it means. So I said, well, what's possible then? There's this, what someone was calling green PE, so it's from a bio-based source, and it's 20% more expensive typically for the more sustainable PE. So I took a look at this product and I said, that's over-engineered. If you 20% higher thickness than what most people are using for, primary product care labeling, for example, at McBride's, on a shampoo bottle, 80 micron PE is typical. So I took a look at that and said, okay, so you've got 20% higher price. If you drop the thickness, most film suppliers actually sell by weight. So you drop the thickness, you get greater area, and you can compensate for that 20% increase. So by dropping the thickness, re-engineering the product, it still works, it still does everything that the consumer needs, and you're balancing out. So it's just about being creative, You can have a cost-neutral, more sustainable material quite easily if you just think about re-engineering your products in a way that doesn't do anything at all for the performance. So the next one I'm going to focus on is number 1, which is APO-free adhesives. Just to show you where we stand in the value chain, you see obviously we're right kind of bang in the middle of it, you and I, as consumers, press the right one this time, or right here, and this is end of life, so let's not consider that for now. So you can see where we are in the value chain, where we're putting together components which then get attached to the finished product, like a jacket, for example, which I showed you before, and then that goes to distributors and retail. So when we design something, we're designing it with the end in mind, with the consumer in mind, and also for what it needs to do. Typically these things are made in factories in China or Vietnam or India, but then they're shipped for sometimes 8, 10, 12 weeks on the water. So when you design a new material, you have to consider that you want to change your adhesive, for example. Someone says, I want an APO-free adhesive. Reach is telling me I can't have APO surfactants in my products. You've got to get them out. So we redesign it, but then you have to test it. Because if that adhesive goes on a garment and then sits in a container at God knows what conditions for 12 weeks, it could be 50, 60 degrees in a container, humidity variation across the globe. When it gets to the other end and you remove that label, you don't want any residue left behind. You've ruined the garment with one tiny strip of self-adhesive material if you do that. What we're trying to do in RBIS, say, okay, so we've got a product development in. Let's build sustainability in from the outset. Let's build product performance in with sustainability in mind. So changing the adhesive to APO-free, looking at what you can do with the face material, look at what you can do with the liner. Look at those 3 components and see what you can do, understanding that it has to do everything that the current product has to do, and hopefully it's cost neutral. You can see what some of our goals are here. Greenhouse gas reduction goals, paper goals for 2025 to be 100% FSC, films to be more conforming to the guiding principles. I'm going to speak about these guiding principles in a moment. Lots of different high-level goals for our sustainability agenda. How do we do it? I've heard this before in the conference. It's about finding something that both the consumer, the customer can use, and you can use yourself to actually prove or show what is the sustainability step change that you have made in a product. And we use something called a natural step process. I'm sure most of you will have heard of it. And when you develop a new product, we try to conform to the prioritizing questions around these guiding principles. So sustainability principle 1, we can't dig stuff up from the earth at a faster rate than it returns and replenishes. Chemicals breaking down can't cause destruction to the planet at a rate faster than it takes to regrow. And finally, not to impact the basic needs of the environments and the prosperity of the communities where we're sourcing our materials. So in looking at that sustainability as a four principle process, when we think about a new material, we have to have a consideration of all of that. And I'll show you towards the end of the presentation how a new product design for size strip labeling fits and moves in that direction. Not 100%, but it moves in that direction because that's what sustainability is about. So for those who don't know what a side strip looks like, I'm sure you've pulled these things off and thrown them straight in the dustbin many, many times, or used them to stick your Christmas parcels together or something like that. Nice example of recycling. So they need to be clearly visible against the fabric background. So I want to change the face material here. I've got to make sure that it still highlights the print. It's no good having print that's hidden by a film which is too glossy and the light shines and you can't see what's on the label. They have to be folded and creased and conform to the garment, so the adhesive and the face material is quite important here. Paper's not so good in this because it can crease easily, it can fold, it can break easily. You've got various conditions of temperature and humidity. Most of our customers test at 50 or 60 degrees C at 95% humidity to simulate 1 year of shipment conditions. It's not real life, and adhesive will probably never see that, but that's what they're doing to approve materials. Big, tough requirement. And then increasing pressure to conform to regulatory compliance as well, so how you formulate your polymers and your adhesives. So, why we're doing it? We're looking for a sustainable solution at the request of the customer and that of the market going forward. There's legislation drivers. There's cost neutral as a driver. Focusing in this particular case on surfactant usage and the reduction of synthetic materials in accordance with the natural steps. So building design in at the design stage of the project, we're building in sustainable principles at the very beginning, rather than develop something and then measure its sustainability, building it in at the outset. So I don't know how many people know about the APO surfactant issue, but largely it's about not contaminating water streams which affect the reproductive ability of fish. So we're trying to eliminate these. A lot of acrylic polymers or emulsion polymers that have traditionally used APO surfactants, by the time they end up in an adhesive which is being coated onto a pressure-sensitive label construction, they're only there at a very tiny fraction, but it's still too much. 0.1% is still too much for the retail brand owner. When he's got an APO free, that means APO free completely. So quite a tough requirement. So what did we do? First of all, we changed, if you look on the right-hand side here, this is more or less the old product. We're going to change the adhesive on the old product, but keep the face material, which is a conformable film, which comes from Avery Dennison's engineered films division. Here, the new product, you can see there's a 35% reduction in synthetic material usage without any compromise in the performance of the film. It prints the same, the adhesive stays with the film the same, and it performs the same right through the die cutting and application process. We reformulated the adhesive to be APO free, which might sound really simple. There's loads of different surfactants out there, but this isn't just about doing it in a lab and saying, yeah, you can have it tomorrow. You do it in the lab, then you do it in a pilot scale. Anyone who's done emulsion polymerizations will know that scale up is an absolute massive issue. You don't do these things overnight. So it takes time, and then you have to do your trials and your coating trials, and then you have to do your shipping trials and all of this when you're developing a new adhesive. Another change that we made was we realized in terms of in this industry, there's different printing processes require different release liners. Flexo process, you can use a thin liner. On a roll-to-roll process, on a sheet-fed process, you need high lay flats, so you need a heavy release liner. But it can be over-engineered as well. So we took the thickness of the release liner down. So in all three components, we made a step change in sustainability for the new apparel label film. So what does that mean overall? You can see from the reduced environmental impact compared to the traditional materials, the transcode or the polypropylene materials. We've got a 34% reduction in synthetic polymer usage, 100% APO-free adhesive, and some thinner release liners. So being creative, product design, what can you do, which makes a step change in looking after all of these principles. So how does that look in terms of the guiding principles? We've got a tool called Green Print, which I've not been able to do on this particular new development just yet because it requires the life cycle analysis, which takes some time for some of the new materials that we're using. So I'm doing it only on a qualitative basis right now. If you look at sustainability principle number 1 about not polluting with extracted materials, here's a step change, 1/3 reduction of oil-based polymers in the face films. Sustainability number 2, don't pollute with manufactured materials. So we're removing APO surfactants from the adhesives. In terms of number 3, don't over-harvest. We've got thinner papers, so less use of harvested materials. And in terms of number 4, we're not to impact or influence the people's welfare. You've got safer water for sustainability of fish stocks by removal of the APO surfactants. So it's really about bringing creative intelligence, and simple re-engineering can often do it. Take a look. These are commodity materials. I'm not talking about groundbreaking innovations like I've heard for the last 2 days here. These are commodity products. And you can see that from this type of approach at the design stage, you can actually build in sustainability relatively easily without too much loss of performance. So just to summarize my talk, RBIS, Avery Dennison RBIS, is all about everything we do is driving purchase intent. From the simple size strip to the nice hang tag to the heat transfer on the back of a football shirt where you flash your smartphone at it and it tells you that it's Messi's number or something like that. It's all about driving purchase intent. Integrated solutions throughout the whole supply chain, understanding the drivers, understanding the consumer needs, understanding the purchase intent. All the research that we're doing is telling sustainability is actually meaningful. It makes us meaningful, and it really is a huge driver from the consumer perspective. And keep in mind that research that we did, where the consumer is actually willing to pay more. This is an argument that we can all use when we're trying to develop cost-neutral materials, which is a big struggle sometimes. We innovate faster through collaboration. Of course, I think we've heard a lot of that in the last 2 days. And of course, leveraging strategic partners to drive our volume business. So hopefully I've given you a bit of an overview of how you can really just take a look at when you've got a new project, you've got a new demand from a customer, you want to be more sustainable, just look at your very early stages of your stage gate process and design it in from the beginning rather than try to build it in at the end. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael, for this very interesting and inspiring talk. Do you have questions? It's not a question, it's a comment. You're not in the business-to-consumer business. You're not in direct contact with the final consumer, and your approach is based on consumer perception. Mm-hmm. Is it original? Is it... what are the advantages you find in making studies on final consumers, which in fact are not your customer?
Yeah, so that's about really going to the purchaser, the consumer, like you and I, who's going to be in a store. And rather than making assumptions or relying upon what our customers, which is the brand owners, relying on what they tell us, we go and find out from the horse's mouth, as we say in UK, exactly what really will drive purchase intent. And then we build that into our design, and we have those discussions with the brand owners. So they're having those discussions as well, of course, and they're innovating what they think is right. And we're actually confirming, making sure that we are developing something that will actually sell at the end of the day and drive purchase intent.
Okay. Yeah. And the figures you gave on the expectation of consumers are a little bit striking by their extreme values. 98%, 91% of the consumer accepting to pay more for sustainability. Is it not opposite to what we have heard before on sustainability is not valuable to final consumers?
I think you've got to be very careful with assumptions that are as wide sweeping as that. You know, we do. If you put two coats on like this in front of a consumer, which is what some of our insights people will do. And they will say, which do you prefer to buy? And the first thing they will say is that, and then say, well, even though it's 10% more, I say, yeah, it looks better. I know it's got. There is increasingly an environmental conscientiousness, even at the end user, like ourselves. You see this in other areas where there was a study done a few years ago when I was working for Innovate Films where they were selling the cellulose-based biodegradable material. And it was like 2.5 times the price of a polypropylene film. And you put those two packages in front of a customer and say, well, this one, you can do something at the end of the life. You know, kids are coming out of school now, absolutely much more environmentally conscious, pushing their parents to buy more environmentally and socially responsible products, even though they might be 50% higher. There's a change going on out there. And I think we're seeing some of that in this research that we do.
Okay. There's one question.
Actually, it's linked to the question of Frederic. I was also intrigued by your statement around the 91% and consumers being willing to pay more. I was wondering if in your market research you were also able to quantify, at least in your area, how much more are they prepared to pay, or at least a range? Yeah,
that's a good question. I don't have the answer to that right now. I don't get involved so much in. I'm just a user of the data that our insights people give. But that's a good question, and I will certainly find that out.
Okay, another question.
I just have a very practical question. Whenever I buy a new product, there's this paper label on that, and whenever I try to scratch it off, it will break, and then I will still have the adhesive film on it. Can you give me a tip or advice how to remove it? Water doesn't help. Glass cleaner does not work.
I think the guy from 3M is here also, but in the laboratory, I would never recommend this, by the way, but if you were in a laboratory, you use N-heptane. It's beautiful. If you remove something from glass, it's amazing. Yeah. Don't do that at home. Yeah.
They don't sell it in Tesco.
No, you don't get that.
That's sustainable.
Yeah, but no, I know the problem. I mean, of course, you know, that's why we do all this testing. We have massive claims if we have something like that going on. I've got a Reebok shirt that I paid a fortune for, and it's got a huge ghosting patch here from the adhesive, you know. If Avery Dennison, we try our damnedest. We go through rigorous testing to make sure that doesn't happen. So it's a tough requirement, you know, because what we're not in control of is suddenly the garment changes or the fabric changes, a new coating is put on it. And 1 week it's working, the next week it's not. The adhesive is not just about the adhesive, it's about the surface that it's sitting on as well. And if that changes, then you're in trouble and you have to go through all this testing again. But yeah, if you're really stuck, N-heptane. I carry a bottle around with me all the time.
Okay, last question.
Maybe one point, we've been talking about labels and sustainability. You could guess that the most sustainable label is not having it anymore, and maybe just having it information printed on the garment, for instance.
Yeah.
Is Avery Dennison going that far in challenging themselves, or?
Yeah, this whole Internet of Things, you know, we're building in smartphone technology. There's a lot of work going on in that area. I'll give you one example on brand authentication. You say, okay, let's not have the label anymore, yeah? Mm-hmm. But your football shirt will still have the number or the team printed on the back, something like that. And we can build technology into that where the smartphone reads it and it goes directly to the website, tells you that it's an authentic article. Mm-hmm. That's one example. Same thing, you know, a bit like what QR coding, where you can get the price just by holding your cell phone up. RFID. Yeah, we have a lot of that in our information systems business. Yeah, I bought some running shorts last year, and inside there was an RFID chip. You know, and they were an expensive pair of running shorts. I bought a cheap pair the following week, and it's not there. You know, so it is being used for inventory management as well as authentication. but it's hidden. It was hidden in the care label. You know, I didn't know it was there until there was a pair of scissors printed on the care label. So I did what it said and cut it off, and there it was. Yeah. So it's coming. It's coming more and more.